Welcome to A Step Forward, Tips for Everyday Communication in English. A Step Forward is a multilingual course available in 6 different languages. These tips for everyday communication are provided in French, German, Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish, as well as English. Our multilingual course contains 4 units. Today's unit, Unit 1, examines how to ask for something in English. Unit 2 discovers how we can apologize in English. Unit 3 examines linguistic politeness in English. And Unit 4 provides some interactive scenarios. In Unit 1 today, in the context of traveling, we're going to discover how we can ask for something politely in English. We're going to review some sociocultural information and finally provide you with some online activities where you can practice what you have learned today. In Unit 1 in English, here we're concerned about making requests and especially how to make requests politely in English.
Well, here we are at the station already and with time to spare. Can you wait with the luggage? I'll go and find out about the train times for the return journey. Won't be long.
Fine, I'll wait for you here.
Back in a tick.
How can I help you?
I wonder if I could please get a map of the station and also the return train times for the Belfast line.
We don't provide maps or train timetables on paper anymore, I'm afraid. All the information is on our website or on our travel app, but I can give you the train times if that would help.
That would be great. And could you be so kind as to write down the website address for me? I wonder if there's Wi-Fi in the station that I can use and if there is a password.
Of course, no problem. I'll write that down for you too. I would recommend that you always check in advance as things can change on weekends and bank holidays.
Okay, I'll do that. Thanks a million. All right, I'm done. We have time for a coffee, in fact. Hang on. Where did I put my money? Do you have any change on you?
No, I don't. Sorry. Never mind.
No problem. I'll go. I'll be back in a tick.
Bring me a coffee too, please. Remember, I take sugar.
What can I get you?
2 coffees to go, please. 1 with sugar.
Here you go, and you can get the sugar over there on the counter.
How much do I owe you?
That's €5.60, please.
Here you go. Keep the change. Have a good day.
Thanks a lot.
No worries. Take care.
The 11 o'clock Enterprise service to Belfast will depart from platform number 2. Customers will be asked to present their tickets before boarding.
Right, Anna, let's go. Thanks for driving me to the station and for all your help. I know you are busy, but if you don't mind, could you check on my cat and make sure she's eating okay? You know how much I worry about her.
Of course, we already talked about that. No worries. Off you go. You are going to miss your train.
Anyway, thanks for popping into my place whilst I'm away. I appreciate it. I'll bring you back a little something from Belfast.
No problem. Enjoy your trip and text me whenever you'd like me to come to collect you. See you soon.
There are lots of different words in English for this type of thing. We can make a request, or we can ask, we can order or beseech, question, exhort, or implore. But ultimately, we're trying to ensure in this course that you understand how different factors influence our politeness. We want to emphasize the importance of context in making requests, some cultural information that may be appropriate, and we want to include the listener's perspective, the other speaker, how they are thinking or feeling. In today's unit, you'll also discover that in English, often we use indirectness rather than directness to make a request. So, when it comes to making a request, there is a balance. When one is asking for help, that help often involves a burden or an imposition on the other speaker. That's why the importance of the context is vital in this type of situation. Otherwise, speakers encounter problems. We need to acknowledge both that we need help we would like to do something or say something or ask something, but also that will involve some sort of imposition or burden on the other speaker. That may involve their time, their attention, it may be financial or otherwise. The levels of politeness vary in English, although we don't have pronouns which differentiate between people who are strangers to us versus people who are in our close family or friendship circles. We do recognize different levels of formality and different levels of familiarity. We can use direct inquests with the imperative in English in familiar settings. Those might be things as simple as, give me your bag, sign here, come by the house this evening, go this way, don't forget the bread. This imperative or exhortative imperative is often used in English in informal settings. In terms of requests addressed to you, we can use different levels of directness. So instead of give me, you could say, can you give me? Could you give me? Could you please give me? Would you be so kind as to give me? Working up through different levels of formality, depending on the familiarity we have with the other speaker. It's important to emphasize that we soften our requests in English to make them more polite. We soften through using modal verbs, using informal indirect statements, and we'll give the example here through opening the window. So a more direct version of opening the window request is at the top of the screen, and the least direct is at the bottom of the screen. So if we are with friends or family whom we know well, we could just simply say, open the window. You could say, could you open the window, please? Becoming more indirect, you might say, how about we open the window? Increasing our level of politeness and formality, would you mind opening the window? And then the least direct of all of these requests, it's very hot in here, implying but not asking directly that you would like someone to open the window. So it's important to be aware of the importance of indirectness in English. In some cultures, it's considered impolite to make direct requests, and so this indirect language conveys our meaning. In terms of making a request, one can also use modal verbs such as could you or would you in English. We have already reviewed the use of the imperative, affirmative or negative, give me my bag, don't forget your glasses. And the first person plural imperative, let's go, let's have a coffee, let's jump in the car. We can make requests through turning them into questions. This is the most standard way of doing so. May I have a map, please? Would you be so kind as to write the Wi-Fi password down, please? And very indirect statements. Oh, it's quite cold in here, or I don't have any change in here. The meaning for the other speaker is that you perhaps would like them to give you your coat, turn up the heating, close the window, or that you're not available to buy that cup of coffee that they would like to have. When we look at the schemata involved in making a polite request in English, we see that there are a number of stages. Stage 1 is described as the opening gambit. It's a bit like the first move in a chess game. Then the stage of the request comes along. And finally, there's a follow-up. In terms of opening gambit, very often it depends on the relationship we have with the individual. So let's assume here that we have someone that we know quite well, that's our neighbour James. And he is someone that we might say, hey James, because we know him quite well to attract his attention. So let's, from the choices, say, hey James, I wonder if you could look after my cat while I'm away, please. So James is a neighbour. He's someone that we know, but we don't know very well. A polite request would be the most appropriate one. And then we have a choice in a follow-up of anticipation and compliments, excuses or justifications, compensations or acknowledgement of the imposition or burden. So in the case of James, we might say, hey James, I wonder if you could look after my cat while I'm away. I just can't find anyone else to do it. Only if it suits you. Let me know otherwise. Understanding the different stages of this schemata is helpful when we're learning how to make a polite request. So let's look at it again in terms of an opening gambit, softening into that request, the core of the request itself, and a follow-up. We have 3 examples at 3 levels of formality in English. Hey Jim, this might be our brother. I know you're busy, but don't forget to feed Simba the cat. She gets really lonely, I'll return the favour. Here we have James, perhaps our co-worker in the second row. Excuse me, James, I know you're great with computers. I wonder if you could please have a look at mine. I think I need to update my software and I have no idea how to do that. Then perhaps a doorman in the place where you work, or a neighbour whom you don't know so well, who's much older than you. Good morning, Mr. Cameron. I have a small favour to ask you. I wonder if you could keep an eye on my letterbox while I'm away. The delivery company sometimes leave things on my doorstep and I'm worried they'll be stolen. Would you mind just having a little look every so often? In English, we smooth and soften communications in order to ensure that we sound as polite as possible. We can use the polite forms of modal verbs, could and would, instead of can and will. So could you please, would you please, help me with my computer or check in on my cat? Other forms are to include the opening gambit, which softens your way into the discussion. Rather than making the immediate request, you can start with a softening opening gambit. I wonder if I could ask you. We can also use the words perhaps and maybe. We're not assuming the outcome of the request. Perhaps you could help me with. Maybe you would be free to. In very formal contexts, we use people's titles plus their name. That might be Mrs. Jones, for example, or Dr. Smyth. Another good opening gambit is to include greetings at the beginning of a conversation, good morning or good afternoon. And we will look at salutations and greetings elsewhere in this multilingual course. And therefore also we want to include the use of thanks in multiple ways. In English that might be thank you very much, thanks a lot. In Ireland we say thanks a million, I really thank you. Or saying thanks without saying thanks. I appreciate your time, I'm very grateful, and so forth. Intonation is also important. Pragmatics also emphasizes the importance of non-verbal cues, but tone of voice is very important. And requests like questions can have a rising intonation in English, even if they're not always formulated as a question. Through these statements, we're inviting the other speaker for a response. We could say to a co-worker, hey, give me a hand? Or to a friend, hi there, bring me a coffee bag? Some sociocultural information that may be useful for you related to Ireland includes how our networks of family members and friends and neighbours are important for socialising and for support. In Ireland, families are often a primary network for people of all ages, with regular family visits and celebrations. Adult children tend to continue to live at home for some years after they finish their education, until they can afford to move out. Friendships cross gender and age lines and are forged through school ties, sports, and shared mutual interests. Often, many friendships develop in the workplace, and it is quite common in Ireland to socialise with colleagues outside of work. In Ireland, people value a good relationship with their neighbours and place an emphasis on what we call neighbourly behaviour. Those include greetings, saying hello, helping out with small favours, such as looking after a parcel, or lending a neighbour something that they need. There's also a saying which goes, good fences make good neighbours, meaning that it is helpful to maintain positive relationships with our neighbours whilst not intruding on each other's lives. Different English-speaking norms have different norms regarding levels of directness and formulations of politeness. This is the aim of our multilingual course. It's important to observe and listen carefully in order to determine the norms that are used in each context. Communication in Ireland tends to be much more indirect than in some English-speaking contexts. Speakers in Ireland often avoid saying no directly in order not to offend. Often, a great deal is implied rather than said directly, and speakers will prefer to be polite rather than cause offence by disagreeing overtly. An interesting example regarding politeness in Ireland is that Irish people will often refuse an offer of hospitality, such as an invitation to have a cup of tea or second helpings after a meal, at least several times before finally saying yes. It is polite to keep asking until you are sure that your guests really don't want anything more to eat or drink. I've already mentioned the concept of smoothing and softening. Use of the words please and thank you in many different forms helps smooth the way when we make a request. In Ireland, the expression thanks a million is regularly used. It's related to the phrase in the Irish language, Gura Mila Mahaga, which means thanks 1,000. The word mila means 1,000 in Irish, Ireland's official language, and sounds like million to English speakers. Thanks a million is an informal and friendly way of saying thank you in Ireland. The final part of this unit contains a series of online activities. If you would like to try out what you've learned here, use the QR code below to access some practice activities.